Hey disc golfers, welcome back to Caddy Chat with Jake and Josh. I'm your host, Jacob Arvidsson.
And I'm Josh Wood.
And we're happy and really excited to bring you episode 2 of Caddy Chat. Thanks for joining us for another week. Josh, you want to tell us again what this podcast is all about?
Yeah, our goal here is to be the Players Podcast. We want to bring disc golf content that's going to help the player improve, whether that's mental game, disc selection, running tournaments and leagues like we said last week. We just want to help improve the player and help improve the community from the grassroots level.
Absolutely. So today, on today's episode, we're going to be starting off with a recap of the New World Championship, the DGPT Silver Series event that went on this past weekend in Jacksonville, Florida. We'll go down the list, talk about that a little bit, and we've got a special guest connected with that event too that we're very excited about.
Yes.
We will also be going into our prediction segment, which is going to be more focused on the schedule, the upcoming tour schedule. We have some thoughts on that.
Lots to say.
Yes, we do. We'll also be going into our disc of the month. We'll keep that a surprise until we get there. And then, of course, we'll be finishing with our highlight segment, which is Tourney Talk. And we're excited to talk about the first steps to getting a tournament started.
Yeah.
So to start, let's jump into that recap of this weekend in Jacksonville.
Yeah, in Jacksonville, we had the New World Championship. It's part of the 2023 wraparound season. We had 2 events for that wraparound, both there in the South. And this week, it was Paul McBeth who won. He took it home by a little bit of a margin. And then in second place, we had Garrett Gerthy. And, something that I'm excited about is maybe it was a little prophetic or maybe just lucky of us, but we were talking about Ezra Robinson joining his older brother on a lead card. And boom, here he is in round 2 and 3 on the lead card. So a fantastic showing from him. It was good to see him. But Paul McBeth did win with a 27 under and cleared Garrett Gerthy by 8 strokes. And then Isaac and Ezra were both at 17, just 2 strokes behind him.
So it was a little bit of a battle coming into the third round.
It was all neck and neck. Isaac was up by 1 going into the final round, and Ezra was tied with Paul, and Garrett was just 1 back from them. So it was 2 strokes between the 4 of them.
And then the GOAT showed up.
And then the GOAT showed up. And so, yeah, imagine again being Ezra and Isaac here, on some major coverage on the Pro Tour, on a lead card, and a couple of misfires, and Paul is off to the races. And then you're spending the rest of the round trying to chase him down, and essentially really battling for second place.
Yeah. I mean, at the halfway point, Garrett and the 2 Robinson brothers, they know.
Yeah, they were already 8 strokes back with 9 holes to go.
First place is gone.
Yep.
And they're battling for second place there, which still had a decent payout at $1,800. So they were battling for something. It was still worth their time.
It was.
And then, of course, on the women's side,
Olivia.
She came through.
Yeah.
Maria Oliva, right?
Oliva. I'm sorry.
Maria Oliva. She came through on the women's side. She was the only one not to be over par on the weekend, which is always solid. And then Deanne Carey showed up again. We talked about her last
2
week.
weeks in a row, yeah.
Earned her spot at the top of the leaderboard, and this week she's back in second place this time. But a quality start in the Pro Tour standings for Carey.
Really, really good start for the season, yeah.
And then Weiss and Holcomb finished out the podium there. We had a tie for third on the FPO side as well. So some more popular names for FPO climbing to the top of the leaderboard. And it wasn't a star-studded field per se on the FPO side, but
sure.
The stars that were there showed up.
They showed up and had a great couple of rounds, yeah.
And
put a good tournament together.
They showed why they're the stars. So good for them there. Let's go back to the men's side. Our special guest comes from Marietta, Georgia, and he was basically a nobody coming into this tournament.
An unknown.
And that is Andrew Bradley. He's 21, like we said, from Marietta, Georgia. 968 rated. Finished in 17th, but was sitting on the chase card coming into the final round.
Round 1 was 1,000 rated. Round 2 was 1,020 rated. Yeah.
he torched it.
He did.
And that was really cool to see. And a lot of things we've talked about on this podcast was we want to highlight the grassroots level. And
some of the fights that are going down lower down the leaderboard of people you might not know, but who put together a great round or two.
Yeah, if you're watching lead card coverage, you saw Paul, you saw Garrett, you saw the Robinsons duking it out for first, second, and third, but you didn't see what happened just behind that from a player who played out of his mind and well above his rating.
Yeah.
And that's something that we truly believe deserves to be
highlighted. Yeah,
so
for sure.
We're excited to bring Andrew on the show via the Freshwood phone line. Hey, Andrew, welcome to Caddy Chat with Jake and Josh.
Hey, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. So first off, congrats on the final round chase card appearance with Ace Run Productions. We look forward to seeing you more on that in the future, hopefully. Stellar performance overall on the weekend. Walk us through the emotions of playing in your first ever Pro Tour event.
I was definitely a little nervous. It was my first Pro Tour event, so I was like, I gotta, try my best to, put myself on the map. But I didn't feel too much pressure if I didn't do well. If I had a 4 round, it was still gonna probably rate above my rating. So I wasn't really worried about the rating aspect of it so much. I was just trying to really have fun and soak in the entire experience. And then, I started draining a couple putts in round 1, and I was like, okay, I'm starting to feel it. And then, midway through the round, I started to really gain some confidence. And I did have some bogeys, but I kept coming back with birdies, and that just kept boosting the confidence. And then as the weekend progressed, I just kept building off that confidence, just working on my breathing, telling myself that, hey, it's not that big of a deal. Don't take yourself too seriously. It's just disc golf. But at the same time, you still want to, focus and try your best.
Absolutely. So during round 3, your putting remained over 90% like it did the entire weekend. But the birdies and the birdie looks from Circle 1 especially just weren't really there for you in that final round. What was the difference between the first 2 rounds and that final round?
So the first 2 rounds were a little bit warmer. They were probably around, I'd say, 70 to 78 degrees. And then that last round started out around 66 degrees. So it was a little bit colder and a little bit windier on that 3rd round. And my tee shots just weren't really coming together that last round. I had no nerves, which really felt great. And I was feeling no pressure. But I just couldn't really get the disc flying right. But luckily, when I was landing inside circle, which was usually for par, that during that 3rd round, I was hitting a lot of those putts, which was really boosting my confidence. But I wasn't hitting a lot of the circle 2 putts for birdie, which was a bit of a bummer.
Yeah, and in hindsight, it was obviously a great decision to go to the New World Championship. What makes a 968 rated player decide to make that journey to Jacksonville and play on a Disc Golf Pro Tour event?
So, as the year was winding down, me and some buddies, it was originally going to be me and 3 buddies from our local scene that, are obviously very passionate about disc golf. And we've traveled previously to the NADGT last year in Austin, Texas. I didn't play that event because I didn't qualify because I didn't really think about it. But I had traveled along with them. And so we kind of wanted to do that again this year. So we decided to do New World because, well, we were able to sign up. Once the registration opened for a certain rating cap, we were like, look, there's spots. And it was like, and it's only, 5 hours from where we're at. Like, let's do it.
Yeah.
So to us here at Caddy Chat, we didn't know who you were. And the many people around the country and the world, other than the people at home in Georgia, also didn't really know who you were. So we would expect to see a 968 rated player maybe pop off for 1 round, but definitely not all 3. So explain to us why this performance wasn't luck and why it wasn't just out of the blue.
I would say it's not out of the blue because when you put me on a golf course, and typically something with longer tee shots and where, in the par threes are a little more technical, that's where I really strive. If you give me a nice open tee shot with a lot of room for error, I typically, land in the middle of the fairway. And on the short technical holes, that's where I really strive on throwing that dead straight mid-range or putter shot. So I feel like these rounds just really weren't out of the blue. I definitely felt like I deserved to be there. I've been working on my rating, but I haven't really been making it, a main compartment of my game. I've been kind of just focusing on, the fundamentals and day in, day out, just trying to get better every day. And I try not to take tournaments too seriously, just keep everything light and just try to get as best as I can in a short amount of time.
Yeah, so it sounds like your play style really suits that links style golf that we saw at New World's Championships. We got to see bits and pieces of your power from both arms. What would you say your play style is?
So I'm usually throwing lefty backhand off every tee shot just because that's my bread and butter. I've got the release point down and the form down. And then when I'm, in a tight spot in the fairway or need to scramble or something, that forehand comes in really clutch. Being able to get it up in the air and get it, around certain trees and obstacles, being able to throw you like a forehand roller. Yeah, they're definitely similar shot shapes, but I feel like having a righty forehand is definitely an advantage along with a lefty backhand when being off the fairway, especially. But yeah, I'd say my strong suits in this sport are definitely forehand up shots and turnover shots, and then probably distance driver shots, just long range shots. I tend to get a lot of local people during leagues and stuff, just be like, man, you're so much fun to watch just because the amount of the weird shots that I throw, it's just a lot of variety.
Yeah, and to get that variety that you mentioned, you must have a lot of go-to discs. What's in the bag?
I putt currently with MVP anodes. I previously putted with for about 2-ish years the Discmania Lynx, but I switched away from them because as the temperature changes, the soft plastic, kind of went through phases, and then I found some inconsistency in my putting, so I decided to switch it up and move over to the anodes, and I found a lot of consistency from Circle 1 with those. My favorite discs, I'll start with mid-ranges. My favorite discs are the Big Bird Rock 3. I love Discmania's MD2. I also love the Buzz and Buzz SS. Buzz and Buzz SS are a perfect complement for me. One goes straight and one just has a nice little turnover. For my fairways, I love T-Birds. I love Thunderbirds. And I also love the Discmania FD. The OG FD, but the new run of FD for Discmania is also great. And for distance drivers, I like Destroyers and DD3s for the most part. So pretty similar, just basically bomber discs.
I love the Buzz SS combo. I think that's a good combo to have. So Andrew, you've only been playing the sport for a couple of years. How did you get into it in the first place?
So I grew up in Marietta my entire life, just north of Atlanta. And I grew up playing baseball. That was my passion. I loved it. And then travel ball just got a little too political for me. Just basically the culture of baseball was changing rapidly, and I wasn't really having it at that time in my life, being in high school. And so I decided to put baseball aside and right, a year or so before COVID, my friends from high school started playing disc golf and were like, you should come out and play. And I played, and within a couple weeks, I was starting to beat them. And they were like, well, damn, maybe you should pursue this. And I never stopped ever since. I have probably played 95% of the days since the day I picked up a disc golf disc.
Relatable.
Yeah, and really cool. So here at Caddy Chat, we really like to highlight the grassroots level of the sport and empower local level players like yourself at this point. So tell us about the local scene in Cobb County, Georgia, and how it's helped you grow as a player.
We have a really tight-knit group over in Cobb County, and we in the spring and summer months, we do leagues on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Tuesday being singles and Thursday being doubles. And this time of year, in the fall and winter, we do glow doubles on Thursdays. So that's really good to just get out there and get a lot of practice in, play with people who are a little more experienced, and also play with people who aren't as experienced. So, you get to have that nice connection with everyone in the community.
And touching back to the Disc Golf Pro Tour event from this past weekend, you had some opportunities on the production side as well as playing some disc golf this weekend. Tell us about that.
So before feature card teed off, round one, I was already done with my round because I had teed off at like 10:30. And the DGPT guys were doing the arm speed and the distances. And he goes, "Hey, can you do me a favor?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. What's up?" And he's like, "I have to dip after 9 holes and go edit." He's like, "Do you mind taking over and doing the arm speed and distances for the back 9? I was like, "Oh, heck yeah. That would be awesome." So it was really cool to be able to follow the feature cards so closely, be able to see how fast they're throwing, see how far they're throwing, see where they're putting from, all that kind of stuff. That was really cool.
So after your performance this weekend, your 968 rating, I mean, at least to Josh and I, it's pretty clearly blown out of proportion. You're a lot better than that, Andrew. So what does the 2023 season look like for Andrew Bradley?
It definitely, starts me off on the right foot. It definitely boosts my confidence, and it basically boosts the morale as well. All the people in my community have been cheering me on and making me feel, on top of the world, which is awesome. And so I feel very confident next year taking on MPO and trying to play as many events as I can, and just trying to get my name out there.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for joining Josh and I here on Caddy Chat. I know the two of us look forward to watching your career continue to blossom.
Thank you for having me. I really, really appreciate it. And I definitely want to give a shout out to all of my friends over at Oregon Park and the Cobb County Disc Golf crew. That's my home base, and those are my friends, and I like to call them my family.
Yeah, very cool. That was rising star Andrew Bradley, fresh off a 17th place finish on the Disc Golf Pro Tour next to some of the best in the world. You can catch the chase card coverage on Ace Run Pro. They've got it all over there on their YouTube channel. We'll put a link in the description, and go check that out and enjoy some more good disc golf.
Absolutely. So continuing on the Pro Tour side of things, let's transition into our prediction section. We're not going to do so much predictions as we will just take a short-ish look. I know we have some thoughts on this, but a short-ish look on the upcoming 2023 tour schedule now that we've gotten the first 2 rollover events out of the way, the 2 Silver Series that are actually being played in 2022, which was a whole different issue that we're just going to skip over right now because it's going to take too much of our time.
Yeah. So now let's head back to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
From Florida to Vegas.
Just straight over to Vegas.
I mean, they got 3 months to get there, but
yeah. So we got the All-Star Weekend to start it off, just like last year. Then we go to Vegas, very similar there, down to Waco, and then we have our first change. Which is last year it was the Open at Belton. That has been moved. It is now the Open at Austin.
Yep.
I like that they kept the same-ish name, but obviously new location, so we'll be looking at a different course. And I'm
excited about that.
I know the Belton course had a lot of good reviews from the players, though, and they enjoyed playing there. And I know visually it was a nice course to look at as well on coverage. So we'll see what the Austin course has to provide. You don't know till you get there, and there's obviously a lot of other factors involved. But, that Open at Austin is the first wrinkle we'll see next year.
Yep, and then it's back on track with Texas State and then over to Music City Open. So, one of the things we talked about is some of the weirdness of the travel path of the tour. Because they start in Vegas, they go to Texas, Tennessee, North Carolina, Georgia, Arkansas, and then back to California, and then work their way up the coast and back over to the East Coast again. So, or what way would that be on camera? Anyway, they head back east. So just zipping across the country back and forth a little bit. Why don't, especially if we're doing this wraparound season and we're starting in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
why don't we just work our way from Florida over to, through Texas, over to Arizona, Las Vegas, California, and then up the East Coast or West Coast to the Beaver State Fling and all that, and work your way back down.
Because I mean, you make a lot of sense, Josh. And the schedule really doesn't, to be honest with you.
It's as simple as that.
It's pretty simple. No, if you think about it weather-wise, the southeast portion of the United States is consistent enough in the colder months where you can host a tournament. I mean, yeah, Florida can get cold, but we're talking not even comparable to what we get up here in Michigan.
Oh yeah.
So you can, and we still play in the snow.
We do.
So there's that. But
they just started this Saturday.
So there's that aspect. If you're saying 50 degrees is too cold, then that's an argument for another day. But yeah, I strongly believe you can start in the middle of winter like they did now. It doesn't even have to be a wraparound. I mean, you can start it in January, and that's another point that I want to make is the off season. These guys are like major league pitchers, for example. They're throwing their arm all the time. That's what these guys are doing. Yeah. There's a lot of wear and tear in your body.
Oh, absolutely.
And the off season is important. So although these wraparound events are great, the players, especially the middle tier players who know they need points for the next season to qualify for the Tour Championship, which is giving away, I mean, I'm sure they'll beat the $35,000 figure that they gave to first place this year, because they've been topping it every year. So those middle tier players know they need the points, so they're gonna be there. Yes. But how much of their health are they sacrificing at that point by not really taking an off season?
I suppose so. I mean, we're still in the beginning of November. They've still got a few months if they need some time off, for sure. But even at that, we could still start closer to Florida in February. I mean, why do we work our way from California over to Texas and Tennessee and then back to California? I mean, why can't we just start over here on the East Coast in the South where it's warmer in February and March, and down through Texas and maybe something in Louisiana and Las Vegas and California, and then start to move up the West Coast around, April or May, or when it starts to get a little warmer.
And I think looking at, the stereotypical Elite Series events, nothing comes to mind from that southeast portion of the U.S. besides Florida. The Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama stretch. You've got the Champions Cup up in Atlanta. But other than that, the Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama stretch of states has nothing. I know there's disc golf there. Yeah. And there has to be some level of a championship course. So why can't we put something there?
Matty-O's got to play somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. He didn't just randomly get good sitting on his couch at home. So there has to be a place there, and that would be the natural connection to progress from Florida over to the Texas through Arizona and up. And I mean, the All-Star weekend is a nice way to kick off the season, but at the same time, honestly, does it really need to be the first week of the season?
Right. No. I mean, that's not how they do it in other sports, is it?
That's
not
another
that I'm aware of.
That's another issue for another day. But yeah,
it seems to me if you have a nice flow for the tour all the way around, I mean, you're saving money, you're saving logistics, you're saving mental health when people are running all back and forth across the country. It just seems like it's a win-win all the way around if we could maybe try to find a little more flow for the tour.
And we had talked about it doesn't need to be a straight line. It doesn't need to be Florida, Alabama, Texas. I mean, it can go up to Atlanta and then back down to Alabama. It can go touch in Jonesboro, up in Arkansas, and then down into Texas. It can have a little bit of a snake roller coaster feel to it. But this California this East Coast,
North Carolina to California,
and then back again, it doesn't really make feasible sense for a sport that doesn't have the cash flow, and the players don't have the financial ability to be moving that much unless they're in the top tier. It really hurts those road warriors who are trying to make a living week in and week out.
It's a lot of gas money.
That's a lot of strain on the pocket.
Let's try to be more efficient.
Exactly. The other couple things we wanted to touch on the schedule, First thing that pops to my mind, other than the Open at Austin change, right after that, Texas State Championships. Previously a national tour for several years. Obviously an Elite Series event with that. Last year was a regular Elite Series event on the Pro Tour, as the national tour kind of merged with the Pro Tour. And then this year it's down to a Silver Series. You know, it happened last year with a couple of the stalwart NTs. They're kind of getting weeded out maybe.
Yeah.
And pushed to the side for some other events, which is interesting.
Yeah, do you think, I mean, the Pro Tour, as it progresses and evolves over the next several years, they're trying to find their rhythm, they're trying to find their groove, I think. And so they're shifting things around and trying to find, you know, the best events to put together in one tour that are going to be the most entertaining and the most exciting to watch and play in, I think.
Yeah, and I don't think that's
so it's
a bad
fun
thing.
to watch.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing
I don't
at
think
all.
anybody should take it personally yet.
Yeah. And the other thing we saw, the return of the Kansas City Wide Open, which big A tier, and a
Fun
big
event.
a big event that drew a lot of people for several years. Kind of disappeared over the last couple, but now it's back as a Silver Series, right? I believe.
The Kansas City Wide Open. Yeah, Silver Series.
Silver Series. That was big, and then the other one that you want to talk about, the Zootown Open.
The Zootown, that's a huge change in the Disc Golf Pro Tour for sure. Missoula, Montana. Have you heard of it? It's a great place.
It's drawn.
I have friends there.
It's drawn several pros over the years as an
Yeah.
A tier. Well-run event, beautiful course.
Yep.
But on tour,
Definitely uncharacteristic.
Yeah.
But I think again it makes way for what we were talking about. If you win around the country more efficiently and you get up to the Beaver State Fling and you're playing your events in Washington, now you've got Missoula, Montana. We've got the Preserve in Minnesota. I mean, there's plenty across the northern border of the United States to fill in some gaps for the Pro Tour for sure.
Absolutely. The Midwest tournaments got switched around a little bit.
They did.
But they're still the same. I mean, you've got the stalwarts, Ledgestone, Deglow, Idlewild in there, Preserve, like you said, Josh.
Yeah.
They're all in there, just tweaked a little bit on where they fall in the schedule. But I'm sure we'll see most of the big name players there. Deglow is a playoff event this year.
That's right.
That'll be different.
And do you want to talk about that a little bit? How they've spaced the playout events?
Yeah, we found that kind of interesting.
Yeah.
You go playoff, then you go Silver Series, then you go out to Vermont for the Green Mountain Championships, which will be Worlds this year. So a major, obviously, we know the field size that they bring into the major is like 250 people or something like that.
Yep.
On the MPO side, and the FPO side is massive as well. And then you go to another Silver Series, then you go to
The playoff.
another playoff, then you go to
Two more majors.
the USDGC and the USWDGC, and then
another playoff.
Another playoff. So what Josh and I were talking about was what happens when somebody, unlikely, but it's very possible, what happens when someone doesn't qualify for the first playoff at Deglow, and then they get in the Silver Series, they score a couple points. They get into Worlds, they pop off, they score points. Now, are they eligible for MVP? Still maybe not, but they've got another major and another Silver Series to score more points. You could see the Pro Tour standings change and somebody get into the Pro Tour finale
who wasn't able to go to
who
Deglow.
wasn't even at the first or maybe even second playoff.
Yeah.
That just seems a little backwards to me.
I'm confused. I'm excited
What's the point of the
to
playoff?
see how that works out.
Yeah, what's the point of the playoff? I'm sure it will work out. I mean, we saw it this year. The top players made it and ultimately competed for the grand prize. And ultimately, Ricky.
It's just a really weird twist.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're working out the kinks still. We'll give them slack for that. But we found that kind of interesting. And Worlds in Vermont. What are your thoughts on that? Last time we were there, we had Greg Barsby take it down out of the blue.
I'm excited about that, and we knew that when we were going into the tournament this year in Vermont, and so just watching that tournament and thinking about Worlds being there next year, I was excited. I think it's a great course for a World Championship.
Great pair of courses.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they complement each other very well. Do you think we'll see another surprise winner? Obviously, Greg Barsby kind of, I mean, he's a great player, don't get me wrong, but he kind of came out of nowhere to win that title. Do you think we'll see something similar?
I do, but only because I think 2023 is going to be a little wild. You know, one of the things that we saw in 2022, I think, was a greater variety of winners throughout the season than we've ever seen before. And I think it's going to happen again this year. I think there's going to be a lot of people that we've never heard, we still haven't heard of today yet, who are going to be on the podium in some of these majors and elite series events.
Maybe Andrew Bradley.
Maybe Andrew Bradley will win Worlds in Vermont.
Andrew, I hope you do, because
And me too.
You will look awesome, and so will we. So we'll appreciate that a lot. Let's transition over to our new segment for this week, the Disc of the Month.
Yeah, Disc of the Month this month is the Discraft Mantis fairway driver. The Discraft Mantis is, I wouldn't say that it's an extremely common disc. I don't see a lot of people throwing it. On tour just this year, we've seen Ulibarri throwing it quite a bit. But he might be the only one I can even think of for sure that throws it.
I'm sure there's a couple more.
There's a couple more. I'm sorry to you that I don't know. But it's fairway driver. It's the numbers are 8-4, neg 2, 2.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, and I'm generally an Innova guy. I don't know if you could tell that yet with my hats, but so I would compare it to like a Valkyrie. To me, it's a little bit slower of a Valkyrie. But it's the kind of disc, I think it's a great disc for a newer player. These are the kind of discs that maybe the slower arm speed or somebody who's just getting into disc golf is going to be able to control. It's got just enough flip and stability that it's not going to get out of control crazy. It's not going to be too stable and diving off on you really quick, but it's probably not going to flip over on you either. It's going to be really controllable for that medium-sized arm.
Yeah, it's got a nice S shape. You can really carve up tight wooded fairways with it. I know that's why a lot of players love it on all skill levels. It's not just a short range accuracy disc. It's not a long range bomber. It's a tweener, like a fairway driver should be, and it carves up fairways very nicely. It hits lines and it holds lines.
Very reliable.
Whether you put it on the ante, a hyzer, or just try and get the flat shot. You can manipulate the Mantis very well. The one thing that it's known for is glide. I know some people think glide is a myth, and that's an argument for another day that I'm sure we'll have. But it is glidey. Whether you believe in glide or not, the Mantis is glidey. It seems to float in the air.
It does float.
With minimal effort, and I think that's where a lot of the glide idea comes from. You know, you can get it to move through the air with not as much effort as you would expect and still get the distance. That's definitely the Mantis. The other thing about the Mantis compared to some other fairway drivers is the dome.
It is very domey.
And that's what's interesting about the evolution of the Mantis is 2013 it came out the first time we saw it as the prototype Ace Race disc from Discraft. Came in the titanium plastic, much lower profile than it is now. I mean, we're looking at these ones right now, and they're not super dome, but they definitely have a dome to them, and that's definitely different from the Ace Race version, which by no means was it board flat. It didn't look like a Firebird or a Raptor by any means.
But noticeably different.
Yeah, but it's noticeably different from the 2022 version that I'm holding right now. So there is that. Those obviously will affect flight slightly. The Ace Race ones were a little bit different, but they still have the same S shape. And you compared it to a Valkyrie.
Yep.
I have a couple others that I wrote down as I was testing the disc out. The FD,
sure,
the Rockstar from Discmania as well. I also compared it a lot to the Beast. From Innova, just a slower version of it.
Much slower Beast.
But shot shape wise, the Beast is similar in terms of the understability and getting turn off the disc, but also the overstability at the end to finish harder than a lot of more understable fairway drivers that'll just hold the turn and continue
never
to
come
move.
back.
Yeah. So that hard overstable finish, it really reminded me of the Beast a lot. Also a seasoned Innova Eagle, and that's not all mantises. It kind of depends on the plastic. The ones we're holding right here are the with the metal flakes. It's the sparkle, the crystal sparkle version.
A little more stable.
Yeah, definitely more stable than a regular straight Z would be, or an ESP mantis.
Yep.
So maybe one of those, not so
and
much
again,
an Eagle.
just for perspective, again, because you've got a much faster arm speed than I do.
Mm-hmm.
So you compare it to a Beast. It's nothing like a Beast for me. For me, I'm going to throw a Beast and it's going to dive into the ground immediately like a rock. And same with an Eagle. I've never found an Eagle that flies straight for me. Eagles are overstable discs for me. They come back very hard.
That's what this one will do. To be honest, I know a lot of you probably don't have a crystal sparkle
That's
mantis
true.
in your hand.
Unstamped.
But that's
How much
what
are you
this
selling
one.
these for?
We can talk about that later.
I thought you'd put it up on the.
Yeah, maybe we'll. Yeah, toss an offer in the comments. Maybe we'll sell it to you. The other thing it had a similar feel to was those of you who are old school Discraft fans, the old Discraft XL. The profile is different. The XL is a little bit flatter, like we were talking about. It feels a little bit different in your hand, but the flight is very, very similar to the XL, which I found interesting. And the XL is not on the market anymore. It's out of production except in special runs. So not many people would, not any newer players would recognize that. But that was a comparison that came to my mind very quickly.
Okay.
But yeah, again, what we were talking about last week with know yourself, know your disc.
Yeah.
A lot of it comes down to feel in your hand. If you're somebody that likes domier plastic, that likes the feel that the Mantis would provide, it might be a great fit in your bag as a fairway driver for shot shaping in the woods especially. But if you're someone who wants a lower profile, something like you were saying, a Valkyrie might be a little bit better for you.
Yeah.
Or one of the FDs from Discmania. That might be your go-to. The other thing that was comparable, I didn't throw one, but a lot of forums online said the F3 from Prodigy was similar as well. I'm not a giant Prodigy guy, but that might be something to look for as well.
Yeah.
So that's the disc of the month.
It's a great disc. Go check it out.
Discraft Mantis. Give it a throw.
Yeah. I liked it. Actually, my son has one in his bag too. He bags the Mantis. So I am familiar with them.
So next segment.
Tourney Talk.
Our highlight, Tourney Talk.
Yeah. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. So you want to start a tournament. Where do you start? And so we got 5 or 6 things we'd like to talk about this week just to get the ball rolling. And I'll just throw out number 1 there. One of the first things that I ever do is when I'm running a tournament is I talk to the guys who run that course or run the leagues at that course. I want to make sure that whatever club is taking care of that course, that I'm in contact with them first. And in line with that, I'm also wanting to talk to the township, if there's a township involved, if it's a township park or the city or whatever that case may be. So I talk to the guys in charge. The first thing I do, I'm going to talk to the guys in charge, the club in charge of the course and the municipality that's in charge of the greens maintenance, I suppose.
Hands down, you don't want to irritate the people in charge. If you go out, you pick your course, that's obviously the first thing you want to do for your tournament. Once you come up, hey, I'm running a tournament, you pick the course you want and you go talk to the people who run that course. The last thing you want, especially in the situation of a township or a city parks department, the last thing you want is to go run an event without their permission and then get the entire course shut down for everybody. We've seen it happen before. So, don't do that.
Not fun for anybody involved.
That is a bad choice.
Yeah.
Step 1, talk to the people in charge. Pick your course, talk to people in charge.
Yeah.
Seems easy enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a step that sometimes people miss.
Yeah. It's an important one. And speaking of people in charge, step 2, at least if you're sanctioning the event, which maybe if it's your first tournament, you're not going to be sanctioning. But if you are sanctioning it, the next step is to talk to the state coordinator.
Yep. There's one in every state.
Yeah.
Everybody's got one. If you don't know who it is, go on the PDGA website, look them up. I'm sure they would be happy to help you. There's a contact form on the PDGA site where you can just email them straight from there. You don't need to hunt for an email address and send it from your own personal account. You can just send it right from the PDGA website, which is fantastic, a nice tool. But yeah, if you're going to sanction your event, you need approval from your state coordinator in order to sanction that event. That's not something everybody knows. Seasoned tournament and league directors would know that, obviously, but a new tournament director would not know that. So if you want to sanction your event, you gotta contact the state coordinator first and get their permission, because
the reason for that is, and for us it's Mark Stevens.
Yep.
And so we'll contact Mark, and Mark will actually send us a calendar of the entire year and all the sanctioned events in Michigan for that year, because it's important to know you can't have 2 C-tier events within 75 miles of each other.
And they changed
on
the
same
mileage.
weekend, and it changes all the time.
They changed it again this year.
Which is why it's important to check with your state coordinator, because he's legally obligated to know what the current rules are.
Yep.
But it'll probably be in that email that he sends you anyway. And so when you talk to the state coordinator, he sends you the list. You can look through and see, okay, is my event going to conflict with any other event in the area? And so reaching out to them is extremely important.
Yeah.
And that's the next step.
Absolutely. You also got to check like we said with the state coordinator, they will help you out with if there's other events on the same weekend, if you fall within the mileage requirements, or if you'll need to move your event because you're too close to another event on that same weekend. But within that, it's nice to know before you contact your state coordinator if your event might potentially have an overlap, so you can just look that up yourself and avoid the back and forth, and honestly avoid hurt feelings where you're so excited to run this event, you send in the request form to your state coordinator and he or she shoots it down.
Yes.
Because you didn't do your own proper research.
It happened to me this year.
Yeah, and I know in our state, Mark Stevens he's said that before. Do your research, so I don't have to shoot you down after the fact. But our good resource for that, there's 2 of them: discgolfscene.com and the PDGA website. The PDGA website lists all sanctioned events everywhere.
Yep. And you can filter it.
Yeah, you can filter it by state. So you should know.
No excuses.
Yeah, you should know if something is going on at the same time as yours. And then Disc Golf Scene is really good too, because it has a lot of unsanctioned events included on there, which won't show up on the PDGA page, but maybe there's a really popular unsanctioned doubles or team event, for example, that happens, within an hour of you. And so knowing that,
and although you might have permission to do it and you could do it, maybe it's not the wisest decision to do it that weekend,
because you'll lose players. So
right.
The last thing you want is to compete with another local tournament when you could just move it to another weekend and have a really good turnout and a successful event.
Yeah.
So that's that. Anything else? Step 1 wise to starting a tournament for you?
Are we still on step 1? I thought we were on step 3.
Well,
but either way,
starting a tournament.
Yeah.
Is what I mean.
So, the next thing you have to decide is if you're going to sanction again, what kind of sanctioning am I going to do? Is it going to be an A tier, a B tier, a C tier? Am I going to go for an Elite Series event or something like that? Because there are differences between all 3 of those, and they all have their own specific requirements in order to be considered. So the C tier is the easiest.
Yeah.
And there actually aren't many requirements there.
And that's what we would recommend. If it's your first tournament, run it as a C tier.
Yes.
It's going to lower the stress load tremendously.
It will, because for a C tier, everybody has to be a PDGA member, and it has to be 1 to 2 days.
They do not have to be a PDGA member for a C tier.
You're right.
That's the big thing with the C tier.
But you have to pay a $10 fee
yeah.
if you're not.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to include that. I just stopped.
No, you're good.
I stopped my thought
Good.
halfway through. Yes. So you don't have to be a member, but if you're not, you have to pay an extra $10. Has to be a minimum of 18 holes, and there doesn't have to be any added cash. There's minimum entry fees going to payouts of 85%. And so that's just your basic sanctioned tournament. That's the easiest, the lowest level of tiers, and the simplest to run.
And because of that, that's the most popular format that you'll see.
Yeah.
If you go on PGA.com and you look up tournaments in your area, the highest number of tiers will be the C tier.
Yeah.
For that reason. It's the least stressful event to run. Next up would be your B tier, and the biggest difference, like we just mentioned, is you have to be a PDGA member to play in a B tier.
For real this time.
Yep, actually.
And I think
that's a big difference.
And I think the other biggest difference is the added cash.
Yes.
In order to be a B tier, you have to have at least $750 of added cash. And then whereas in the C tier, 85% of net fees had to go to payouts. In a B tier, it's 100%. 100% payout of net entry fees to the amateur purse.
So basically, you get paid more in a B tier. So if you want to make the players happy, run a B tier.
They're going to get better payouts.
Yeah, is how I would
Yep.
I would phrase it. Obviously, there's more work that goes into it, and you have to raise at least $750 of added cash somehow. But if you want to keep the players happy and coming back because of payouts, that's the way to do it. Run it as a B tier.
For sure.
So next up.
And then if you really are a glutton for punishment, you could run an A tier event.
Yep.
And the difference there is the payouts for the amateurs has to be 110% of the net proceeds or the net
another step
net
up.
entry fees. The pros has to be 100% payout plus a minimum of $3,000 added cash.
And that's a huge jump. So from the
$750.
C tier is $0, B tier is $750. Now to run an A tier, you need to raise $3,000.
Yes.
That's a tough pill to swallow for someone running a tiny tournament. So
it is. So I wouldn't recommend that for your first tournament.
No, we wouldn't recommend that.
In fact, I'm sure your state coordinator will want to prove it anyway.
Yeah, second or third or fourth or fifth tournament, I wouldn't run an A tier either.
Yeah. No, those are the big ones. I mean, that's in our area. That's River City Open.
Yeah.
A huge event that Shay and those guys put a ton of work into.
Yeah. So that's a full year process for them.
Yeah. They're already planning. Yeah.
Yeah. So ton of work. A lot of minds go into that. A lot of fundraising. But generally it brings in the bigger names too. So if you've got a course and an event that you want, more popular players at, running an A tier is probably the way to get them there, and entice them with some cash and with just putting more work into it because they're looking for a good experience as well as getting paid.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well said.
So that wraps up.
Who doesn't like to get paid?
Well, some people are. Most people like getting paid.
I think so.
That wraps up kind of bubble coverage around what we would consider step one of getting a tournament ready and preparing yourself to run a tournament. Step two is coming next week, and we look forward to talking about that. We're going to be talking a lot about setting up your registration online. That'll take up a big portion of our Tourney Talk next week, so we look forward to talking about that. We will also be on next week's episode recapping the 2022 Lake County Trailblazer.
Yeah.
Driven by Innova.
Driven by Innova.
It's the biggest A tier on the market this coming weekend.
With a couple of big names there. Paul Macbeth will be there. Girthy will be there. Thomas Gilbert.
Another Florida
Johnny
event.
McRae again. Yep.
Another Florida event. So we look forward to talking about that with you guys and digesting what went down there. And as always, we encourage you guys to throw a comment down below. We showed you the purple crystal sparkle mantises. If you want one, make an offer, I guess, below. You can comment on that. But we'd love to engage with you guys as far as especially Tourney Talk goes. Talk about online registration. What do you like to see? What don't you like to see?
Good experiences, bad experiences.
And even beyond that, what steps after that do you like to see in your local tournaments when the tournament directors are setting it up and promoting it?
Yeah.
Anything else to add, Josh?
No, I think that does it.
That wraps up episode 2 of Caddy Chat with Jake and Josh. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great week. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Yeah, thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.